about age 12 is when, looking back, I've noticed that there was a lot of kind of red flags when it comes to sleep. So that's when sleep really started to become overwhelming in my life. When I was in middle school, my average day would be wake up, take a shower, eat breakfast, and then take a nap on the couch. Um, my mom would take me to school. I would take a nap on the way into school. We're talking 15 to 20-minute naps here and there. And at school, I might take one or two naps throughout the day. Um, I didn't realize it at the time, but my peers, because they were also taking naps, kind of infrequently, but nonetheless throughout the week, I didn't realize they were staying up till 1 or 2 o'clock at night. And see, my day, I would go home and I would take a nap in the afternoon, and then I would be in bed by 8:30 or 9 every night, and
Wow.
this was just this on repeat. And so I started reaching out to my doctor about age 13 or 14, my pediatrician at first, and talking to him about, I'm just really tired. And it took me a number of physicians and a number of misdiagnoses to get to the answers. Kind of fast forward, I talked to four psychiatrists, an internal medicine doctor, and it wasn't until the birth of my first daughter, when I was 25, I was finally able to articulate that I was sleepy. Not I wasn't sleepy because I was depressed. I was depressed because I was sleepy. And so it was, the depression was definitely there, but it was because I couldn't get any traction in life. And so, I made the appointment at age 25 thinking I had sleep apnea. It was kind of ran in my family. My mom had it, my grandfather had it. And during the intake, my sleep physician in just outside of Nashville called in a member of his office staff who was working on his fellowship, and he said, "You need to listen to this young man talk." And at the end, we started asking questions about like losing muscle tone and like my slurred speech, and I was a little bit clumsy, and I was confused because I was here to talk about sleep. And then at the end of the appointment, he goes, "Matt, I just want to let you know we have to do some tests." He explained to me the polysomnography and the MSLT, but he said, if I was a betting man, I would tell you that you have narcolepsy with cataplexy. And I remember just hearing those words, and it was kind of incongruent because I had heard about it in media, but I hadn't really, I'd met one person when I worked in a pharmacy in college who had it, but I didn't make the connection. They had this severe cataplexy manifestation, and that's that involuntary loss of muscle tone. And just was, again, I couldn't come to grips with that's what was happening. So I went through the test, fell asleep in all naps. I went into REM in three, all under the 8-minute mark. So it was a confirmation of narcolepsy with cataplexy. And just walking away, one of the things that also echoed was, he goes, "Matt, I just got to tell you, even if we took away the narcolepsy aspect," he was like, "you were really busy in bed, and you actually had to get up and walk around before you went to sleep." He's like, your amount of physical activity in bed, the periodic limb movement disorder, the restless legs, all would make you profoundly sleepy. He said, so you couple that with narcolepsy. He was like, "I'm so glad you came in." And that was it was hard to hear that, but it was also an answer. And it was an answer I'd been told I had, you know, I was depressed. I was told I had inattention. And I certainly was depressed situationally, and I certainly did have some attention issues because I was sleepy. But it was the first time I really felt heard.
Wow. Sounds like that's a big step forward to get some answers, right? At least to understand what these are. But at the same time, sounds like you have quite several different type of sleep disorders all together in the picture. Very complicated.
Yeah, yeah, and so true. And I got my diagnosis, and like so many people, this was in the early days of social media, so you couldn't just go to Facebook and connect with thousands of peers, in a Facebook group. It was relatively small sample size there. So I would go to the library, I would study where I went to school at Belmont. I kind of snuck back in, did some research, read as many books on the topic as I could. Um, and it was frustrating because I was getting medication. We were treating the symptoms, but we weren't really treating the underlying cause. And so there was a certain amount of grieving that had to take place. I had these dreams. I wanted to become a physical therapist. I wanted to go and help people in that way. I love fitness, I love strength, and I had to kind of reevaluate. I wasn't going to be the world's strongest man, not that I was ever really had that, as my ceiling's a little bit too low for that, but that was something I was interested in doing, was pursuing strength. And it took me a few years to come to grips with, I couldn't be the world's strongest man, but maybe I could be the strongest I could be living with narcolepsy. And so, I started off, I kept lifting, I got after it. I actually met the world's strongest man from the early 80s, and he was so interested in my story that it just gave me this renewed commitment. I've got to make the best out of my life here. And it's been up and down. My family and I lost everything in the 2010 flood. And about, I guess, 4 years after that, my sleepiness was still so profound and so debilitating. I went back for another sleep study, and my doctor was like, Matt, you also have obstructive sleep apnea, severe obstructive sleep apnea at that point in time. And so what was that mild, clinically insignificant sleep apnea had turned into something that really necessitated that I needed to use CPAP. And so it wasn't a hard sell, because you told me I could feel better with the CPAP. I was all aboard that therapy. And the joke with my physician now is that my goal is 100% compliance. Every night, making sure I'm hitting my markers for total sleep time, and making sure that I'm using every tool that I have to my disposal to live my best life.
Yeah, I love that spirit, even though there's a
Mhm.
lot of difficult stuff going on in life. And some of those sounds like quite out of your control, right? And
Mhm.
unpredictable, uncontrollable. But you are still, sounds like there's some kind of internal spiritual rock inside of you. I gonna still make the best out of my life. I can still do what I'm passionate about. I can take good care of myself as much as possible and follow the lead of the doctors. And you are doing all that. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, do all those helpful to you?
Yeah. So Project Sleep and Julie have come up with a really cool foundation, what they call the 4 pillars of narcolepsy treatment. And it kind of speaks a little bit to that and how I live my life. So you've got naps, medication, social support, and lifestyle adjustments. And in order for me to live my best life, I have to have all 4 of those legs of my table balanced. And if I don't have that, then I'm going to stumble. And it's about balance. And I fall on my face all the time. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this and think, oh, Matt has everything together, because no, I've picked myself up so many times. It's just a part of the process. But for me, you talked about the source of that strength. I have 2 teenage daughters, one of which is about to graduate from high school now. I've got another who just turned 16. I've got a 9-year-old son. These were my reasons for waking up. And one of the things I hope to talk with you today about is the struggles with relationships and the importance of social support with peers. I lost the relationship with my kid's mom, in part a lot due to the fact that I was living with a sleep disorder. For years of life, we didn't know what was going on. My communication wasn't stellar, and it meant that I had to kind of, again, reevaluate, reprioritize what's most important. Taking care of my kids, being a daddy, taking care of my health so I can take care of my kids. But yeah, kind of keeping that as my foundation. How do I move forward just one step at a time, get out of bed to help get the kids to school, is a success for many days.
Yeah, well, I think I love the 4 pillars of how to, get better dealing with narcolepsy. And I'm sure it's very helpful to deal with many other sleep disorders,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
actually, I interviewed quite a lot of guests talking about narcolepsy, but they all, some of them have relationship, like romantic relationships, some of them don't. But many of them mention definitely peer support and this kind of support are really important. But I think you touch on a very important thing. It's the relationship with the partners, the romantic part.
Mhm.
I cannot imagine if you are struggling with so many sleep disorders and sounds like it's already impact your own functioning, right? How can you even like maintain a work and take care of yourself? And you have to have some energy and time to take care of the family, be there for them. Wow, that's just hard to imagine for me.
It's tremendously challenging, and as I said, I've learned so much from my mistakes. I can't really tell you how I did it successfully, but along the way, I've learned from those mistakes and missteps. I realized that I needed to put surround myself with positive people, and so that wasn't the relationship I had with my kid's mom, and so I needed to find that somewhere else. And so I found myself after being married to her for over a decade, I was actually the primary care parent of all three kids. And so for about 3, almost 4 years, I was the one responsible for the day-to-day activities with the kids, sole custody of my oldest, primary custody of my youngest, and I'd almost given up hope on finding a relationship that was a good give and take. What could I offer? Because as you alluded to, my life was so focused on the kids, making sure they had enough, making sure that I wasn't going to get sick from trying to do too much. And I really kind of blessed in a lot of ways to find a partner who's she's a licensed professional counselor, and she just balances everything. My kids have just bonded with her instantly. She understands that if I say, sweetie, I need to take a nap, that she's okay with that. I also have to. It's work though. Like all relationships, it's a lot of work. You have to reach out and to your partner and say, I need help. Helps. It is a four-letter word, but it's not. You got to learn to say it comfortably, especially as a guy. It seems like that comes hard to a lot of us, but just ask for it. Say, I can't do this by myself. And when I found a partner who loved me for who I am, loved me for even though I had narcolepsy, that was a huge step for me.
Wow. That's very warm just by listening to that. Because myself, I also do couple therapy as part of my clinical work. And I feel like sometimes, at you as an individual, you have very strong resilience in you. I heard a lot of about that. But still, you cannot do everything on your own, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you have a partner, how you two can work as a team together and understand each other's need and be able to step in when the other person is not available. I
Yeah.
think that's sounds like you guys are doing that. And for narcolepsy itself, I remember when I learned about this knowledge professionally, there's part of the behavior treatment suggestion is to bring in family members to educate them, right, about
Mhm.
what people with narcolepsy really need. For example, they need naps, so they need other kind of support. How to teach family member how to support them is the best. So I think you
Yeah.
really doing that in your life.
Well, and I can't tell you how important it is what you just said. I facilitate small groups for Wake Up Narcolepsy, and we have some caregivers. We've had partners and spouses that come to these meetings as well, trying to learn about what their loved ones are going through. Um, but so much is about the communication, the sharing with your partner. For me, I still see somebody. It's been about maybe 2 months now, but I need to go back and make that appointment. I think this is going to be a good motivator to go do that. But I need to check in and have a safe place for me to talk. I need to talk about those issues that are coming up, and that then allows my partner and I to kind of come to some resolution and understanding. And again, I have to prioritize my relationship, in the same way I prioritize my health and my time with my kids. So it's a delicate balance, but the I guess the primary currency there is just communication. I have to tell her what I need. She has to tell me what I need, and sometimes that doesn't work. And then we have to say, "I love you," and let's figure out a way that we can compromise and meet in the middle because that's the only way that we're going to get this done.
That's already great. That I love you. Let's talk about this and figure out, right? Instead of like, no, no
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
My way is a highway.
Yeah, and again, it's a credit to my partner for she has the communication skills in abundance, and so for me to see her setting that example, and we have to have hard conversations. When you're a parent of in a blended family, you got to have conversations about boundaries and making sure that we're doing the best job for the family. We're both contributing, both housework, chores wise, we're contributing money wise. And all of that, again, it's about, let's sit down and let's talk. We like to go on walks together. That's kind of our time where
Oh,
we get out, and it's getting a little chilly. Neither one of us like the extreme cold here in Tennessee. But it's something that we try to do a couple times a week. When she's not in a session, it's nothing that forces me. It's too physical, but it's enough that we can get together, just hold each other's hand, or at least walk side by side and talk about stuff. Whether it's me listening to what's going on in her life or talking about how we can be better parents.
yeah, sounds like I hear a lot of wisdom from this relationship,
Yeah,
right? Create this intimate moment, open up for conversations, including
yeah,
difficult conversations, but challenge that or discuss that in a nice way. And I think one thing you mentioned is so important is to don't be afraid to reach out, ask for what you need. If you don't reach
yeah.
out to your partner, to other people, they will not know you have a need. They will not
Mhm.
know what they could do to support. Right. And you mentioned
Yeah,
that peer support group. I heard from some other guests before too from Wake Up Narcolepsy, which I also recommend to some of my colleagues and patients. I think that's such a great resource that I hope more and more people know about that. And have your own therapist. It's
yeah,
great that you can find time to do that. Even occasionally, I think it's important to us all to have some safe space to talk about things, bounce up ideas, and therapists can treat you without any judgment. It's a very different feeling. It's different than what you can get from
mhm.
friends and families.
No, and I love what you said there. A couple things to touch on. The importance of that peer-to-peer support really can't be understated. When I'm one of the things that I value most about those groups is I get to build relationships with people, and we can connect on social media. We can share cell phone numbers, because those rough days don't just happen right before group. It's going to be on a Friday morning when I just don't want to get out of bed, and if I need to send a message to a friend and say, I just need someone else to know that I'm struggling, and just to feel like you're not alone and isolated. It goes a long way to helping you work through some of those moments. If I have a tough decision I have to make, and it's about balance in life, I might reach out to someone. I've got a friend who's an octogenarian who's been living with this for over 40 years now, and
Yeah.
I can talk to him, and he can provide me perspective. I get to learn from him, and the groups provide a chance for me to learn from people who just got diagnosed 2 weeks ago,
Mm.
because I get to see the world through their eyes. They're asking so many questions, and those questions make me think. And it's like, okay, well, am I actually living this example that I'm trying to set? And do I need to do a better job, recenter myself, and focus on making those good choices? But then also, one of the things that my parents did a wonderful job, even as we were searching for an answer when I was young, is they encouraged me to talk to a therapist. And so, literally, since about age 16, I think 17, I've been seeing somebody off and on. Has a year hasn't gone by that I haven't connected with somebody. Most of the time, it's fairly consistently to work through those issues, because again, we're limited from our own perspective, and a therapist can kind of push us and help us grow. Whether it's CBTI, mindfulness, whatever, CBT in general, however, whatever approach needs to be taken, it's helpful to have somebody walk on that journey with you.
Yeah. Wow. That's so, so important to know that I am not alone.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
feel like you've been experienced that this whole time. You build up relationships with other peers, with other people. And I'm happy your parents, your family sounds like quite supportive and guided you when you were younger. And you are trying to build this kind of professional connection, kind of professional support for yourself continuously.
yeah. And one thing that when somebody does come to group, my first recommendation is, make sure you educate yourself on living with these sleep disorders. So for me, it's been narcolepsy, sleep apnea, and it's been RLS. Um, but make sure you know what the prescribing guidelines are. So use like the American Academy of Sleep Medicine's guidelines, but also make sure you understand the resources that are available through the Society for Behavioral Sleep Medicine. Make sure you're connecting with physicians and therapists who can help you on your journey, because w- nobody's born with a map of how to live life, and especially when you throw sleep disorders into that equation, your roads start forking, and it's tough to know which way to go down. And I hurt so much in those first few years of diagnosis, because I felt alone and I felt isolated, and I was making mistake after mistake, and it now is it those mistakes have value and more worth, because I can then share those with other people. I can say, look, I tried that and it didn't work. You may want to think about trying another option or reaching out, finding another support avenue to help kind of fill yourself up. But if someone can benefit from those struggles that I had, it definitely makes those struggles have some more value.
Right, definitely, definitely. I think it's great. Like there are so many people like you, really outspoken of your own journey and help co-lead these kind of support groups. It just reminded me recently, I think it's a narcolepsy day, right? So I created a Chinese post because there's
Mhm.
recently a Chinese news about a girl, actually sounds like narcolepsy. And then funnily diagnosed within China. So I use that news to write a post. Even today, like every day, there are going to be some Chinese comments under there say, wow, I have everything. I have every symptom.
Mhm.
But there's not a lot of resources in that language and in that field in China. So I guess, right, in many countries in the world, possibly sleep science is not as well developed. But if people can speak English, sounds like there are some support group available. Is there any like resources people can read more about narcolepsy, about different sleep disorders to educate themselves?
Yeah, so the my go-to reference for learning about living with narcolepsy is through Project Sleep's Rising Voices of Narcolepsy stories. They also have what's called the Narcolepsy Nerd Alert, which is both a podcast and some YouTube videos, and it comes with actual promotional material. So, like, you actually have a PDF file that allows you to go through the research. You get to hear some of the stories that are being shared, and it just gives a great kind of best practices way to live with this condition. And in addition to, again, the support groups that we talked about, connecting with your peers, one of the things I think has been so cool to watch grow here recently is Julie with Project Sleep started World Narcolepsy Day a few years back. And so I've had a chance the past 2 years to connect with advocates from across the globe. My hope next year is to actually have 6 continents represented. I had 5 the past 2 years, but to really learn more about that experience. And to your point, you said it so well. There isn't an abundance of materials in enough languages across the globe, but there's a lot of great organizations globally that are working to kind of democratize that information and to get it out there into their community.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's great to know. And I will put some of the website in the show note also. Is there
Yeah,
any like books or anything else? I think you wrote some
yeah.
books yourself too, right?
I I've got a number of blogs that are available, that I can make sure that are included, through a company called Health Union. They do a great job featuring patient advocate stories. The books that really helped me the most are going to be Wide Awake and Dreaming by Julie Flygar. It's her memoir on living with narcolepsy. I actually have given that to about 5 or 6 of my family members. It was funny. I work with pharma companies. I talk about living with narcolepsy, but until they read it in someone else's words, they really didn't understand truly what I was going through. There's something about reading it in such a just plain spoken but articulate way that Julie's able to tell her story, that it helped my mom understand what it's like for me. It helped my brother. It helped my cousin just learn to live with, learn to understand what I was living with. Sleepyhead by Henry Nichols is a great book that talks about sleep broadly, Henry also has narcolepsy, and he's out of London, I believe. And then from a parent's perspective, there's a book called Waking Matilda by Claire Crisp, who's the CEO of Hypersomnia Foundation, and a good friend of mine. And it talks about her journey trying to get her daughter Matilda a diagnosis and some of the walls that she ran into, and how it impacts again the family, that you talked about. So those are probably the three books that I say go out, read those, and it's a great way to understand what it's like.
Great, great. Let's put that in the show note too, so
Mm,
people know
certainly.
book to read. And sounds like that. I like that idea to send those books to family members, right? They
Mhm.
don't have to find a doctor face to face, teach them every single thing. By reading, they possibly can already know some basic, and then they can go out to do more research or ask the right questions to doctors to understand how to support you.
Yeah, and the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program through Project Sleep, it allows individual storytellers to talk about their own symptoms and experiences, and I had a chance to do that with Project Sleep as well. And our symptoms all are under that broad umbrella. We all, there's that pin-tad of narcolepsy symptoms that people with type 1 narcolepsy have, but we experience them differently. So my excessive daytime sleepiness might be more than someone else's. Someone else's cataplexy might be a little bit more profound than mine. One of the things we talk about often in group, partial cataplexy is cataplexy. And so when I slur my speech or when my knee buckles, even though I'm not fully collapsing, that's an example of cataplexy. If I do a head bob, when I'm watching a movie, because I'm laughing too hard, or if I drop my phone, Lord knows I've dropped my phone more times than I care to admit when my kids have snuck up on me and startled me a little bit. Um, our symptoms vary, but when you can hear it from someone else's voice too, it helps people understand. Oh, okay, this is, oh, they had a hypnagogic hallucination. What does that mean? These videos can describe that in pretty good detail. And it's just a great way of kind of passing along the information. Don't take my word for it. Here's another advocate who's sharing their story too.
Yeah, I love this. When I learned sleep knowledge, one thing I always remember is sleep is individual thing. It's very different, right? Even when I treat insomnia patients, that's what I treat the most. Every
Yeah,
single one of them are so different,
yeah.
even though
Well,
it's all insomnia. And narcolepsy is the same.
yeah, well, and I'm glad you said insomnia. One of the things that we talk a lot about in the groups is we have this disrupted nighttime sleep, that we experience, and a lot of people who will come into group and they'll talk about, oh, I was diagnosed with insomnia before I realized I had narcolepsy because I couldn't sleep well at night, and it's this kind of this stigma and stereotype of narcolepsy is someone who just falls asleep while they're sitting upright. you know it's really, that's one of the reasons I decided to talk about it. But there's so much that goes on, and again, my disrupted nighttime sleep is completely different than some of my peers. And so it's great that we have different voices telling similar stories, getting that message out there.
Right. I think what you just mentioned is another important point that sometimes we could have multiple sleep disorders altogether.
Mm,
And even these different symptoms can mask each other, make
yeah,
certain sleep disorders possibly underdiagnosed or got ignored by us or by providers for a while. So for
yeah,
you, I know you've been dealing with three or four at least different type
yeah.
of sleep disorders in your own journey, like what are some suggestions you want to give to any listeners who may struggling with similar things? They have multiple
Yeah.
things going on.
So, do the small things. So for me, I have to use that CPAP to give myself a chance to be awake in the morning because my meds just won't work. Don't be afraid to try different polypharmacy approaches for narcolepsy. You talk to your doctor about this. Don't just take my word for it, but find options that work for you. We're kind of in a golden era of narcolepsy research in terms of understanding what causes it in type 1 narcolepsy, but also the medications that are available. So talk to your doctor to find solutions that work for you. And if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to say, hey, can we try something else? Um, Physical activity, Yishan, has been so important for me managing the periodic limb movement disorder issue and then the restless leg. So every single day, I have to get some level of physical activity. Part of my job is sitting down, and so I've got a pull up bar in the living room where I go and I'll knock out a full pull up, a few pull ups in between, meeting times. Again, I alluded to earlier that I go on walks with my partner, making sure that I have a normal amount of physical activity. Iron supplementation has been very helpful with restless legs, keeping those issues down at night. Um, when I recently, like so many Americans, dealt with COVID, and the being in bed for so long and not moving made my restless legs so much worse. Like I just, I was just, I had evolved and developed all these best practices of movement and living my best life. And then that, getting sick threw me down for a couple days to a week. And I had to even get up and start walking around, making sure that I wasn't, so just bedridden that it was going to carry over the night for me, because as frustrating as the disrupted nighttime sleep from narcolepsy can be, so too is that sudden urge, that burning urge that you just got to move your legs right when you're trying to go to sleep. It's infuriating at times, but for me, also getting up and getting out of bed, I'm sure this is something you've talked with some of your clients about. If I'm in bed for longer than 20 minutes and I'm not asleep, I'm getting up. I'm going to go walk around. I'm going to sit. I like to do artwork as a way, to stay away from my phone, stay away from the TV, but just do some small artwork. I like to, I glue invertebrate fossils together, which is a whole story I could get into. But it's my way of kind of expressing myself, and we get to go out with my family and we collect these things. But you know, do something and then go back to bed. Don't just lay in bed for 30, 45 minutes, because again, that for me, the anxiety, the frustration, the preoccupation with not being able to get to sleep just feeds that, disruption. So find ways to adapt, to get out of bed, do an activity, and then come back. Hopefully you're a little bit more exhausted and ready to kind of wind down.
Wow. This is great. And many of these, I think, is doable, right? Not too hard to really include in our daily life. And I think they are really consistent with the four pillars you talk about
Mm.
earlier,
Yeah,
and especially the lifestyle,
yeah,
how to adjust that, how to make that helpful to our own um, challenges we are dealing with. And sounds like you are
so true.
figuring out a way, like physical activity. It is important when I treat patients with insomnia, but for your case, you realize it can really help with your sleep disorders in what way, right? So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and again, we talk about individuals too. I know that we've got people who come to my group who have idiopathic hypersomnia, and physical activity for them can be overwhelming and exhausting. And so it's important for me too when I'm talking with my peers to understand kind of where they're coming from too, and not just again, you've talked about this too. It's individual, not just put this cookie cutter approach. But okay, if you can't do this lifestyle adjustment, what is something you can do? Let's focus on an actual solution that works for you, and then adapt it and grow from there. Because I didn't start off being able to work out, for 30 or 45 minutes to an hour at a time. It took me incremental, uh, additions to get to that place. So find what works and then kind of grow it from there.
Yeah, I love that. It's not like I just give you a method, do this, do that, because I have a lot of very anxious people coming in. They could not sleep well. They're like, just tell me what to do, right? Don't
Yeah,
tell me all this like theories and research and all this other things. Just give me a method. Hopefully
yeah.
that can cure me. Not that simple.
No, it's really not. And when I realized and I learned to accept that this was going to have to take a multifaceted approach, it came to I was a little more comforted. It's a lot of work. My life revolves around sleep. I have to think about when I'm going to take my next nap. I'm preoccupied with making sure that I get enough total sleep time. Making sure that I'm doing the right things to put myself in the best position to sleep as best as possible. That consistent rise time is so important for me. I get my kids up and get them out the door. the same time every day. I may sleep in 30 or 45 minutes on some weekend days, but I try to keep it as consistent as possible. And if I need to go back, I can take a nap later, but making sure that I'm getting up and getting out, starting my day at about the same time has been just a game changer in terms of how to live my best life.
Wow, this is great. I was just talking to someone yesterday. They're like, "Oh, I'm like, free running style. My
Mhm.
circadian rhythm always delayed every single day. I cannot get up consistently." I was like, "I'm sure with some help, with the right method, you should be able to set a consistent wake up time, right?
Yeah,
That's doable. And when you think about that, instead of saying no, I cannot do that. Give me another method.
yeah. It's no, that's such a great point. And being a dad of three, some nights I'm not going to be able to get to bed. I'm either going to be helping one of my kids with homework. One of them might have a problem with their boyfriend or a friend at school, and they just need to talk through it. And that's when I got to put my dad hat on and just do my listening and help out. Um, but I can my wake up time is something that I do have a lot more control over. It's hard. It's very hard to get out of bed when I don't want to, but it's something that I can do, and that usually sets myself up because I'm ready to go to sleep that next night at a more reasonable hour, or I can at least get to sleep a little bit quicker than I might otherwise.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like you set a really good model for possibly a lot of people who are listening. And no matter what kind of sleep challenges they are facing, right? You are doing a lot of things that really consistent with what many sleep doctors would recommend. And your own experience actually hopefully can encourage someone that, trying this, it could work, and
Yeah.
at least try it out. If it works for you, then keep on doing it. And we are all capable of optimizing our sleep in some way.
Yeah, no, that's a great message, and most of what we just talked about is stuff that I've picked up from experts like yourself, from experts like my friends in the sleep research community, just listening to what they have to say. And again, they may not that it may not work for me every single time, but let me try it. Let me see if it'll work. Change one variable, see if I can make that work. If it doesn't, I can try something else. But keep an open mind too when they throw out suggestions. And it's so easy to want to do that. Just take the simple path. Um, but it normally that's a simple path will come with simple results. It won't necessarily fix the problem that you're dealing with.
Yes, yes, I love that. If you want to go with the easy way, right? There are going to be consequences,
Hmm.
or things won't get
Yeah.
better. Then what?
No. Yeah. And for again, what the most important thing for me is to make sure that I'm ready to be a dad, ready to be a good partner. Part of that means that I need to raise awareness, so that I can help my community as well. That's an investment in me because I come away feeling a little more fulfilled and a little more energized. Um, but yeah, just prioritize and then try different strategies.
Yeah, this is awesome. So near the end of the show, Matt, I want to ask you any resources, any other information you want to give out and that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah. So one thing that I just quickly touch on is accommodations. So workplace accommodations. If you're a parent, you have a child in school who has a sleep disorder, there's those are called 504 accommodations. There's Ask Jan is a network that has the job accommodations network. It's a great resource to learn about accommodations in general, and they have some sections on narcolepsy. That's a great resource. Hypersomnia Foundation and Wake Up Narcolepsy have put and Project Sleep have all put on webinars about how to ask for these accommodations. And um, you know it's not that you're accepting a free handout. You're actually just giving you the tools and resources that you need to succeed at the workplace. And that's something that's been so important for me is making sure that I'm able to contribute to raising my family. I've been blessed to have a wonderful partner who can help with that. Also, I've had to live on government assistance for a while when I was trying to do the single dad bit, but again, just don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you could just put in my social media handles, and feel free to for anybody who's listening to reach out and ask me, and I'd be happy to connect you with somebody in an area that might be able to provide some more assistance on some questions.
Yes, great. So sounds like we have a lot of resources, including your social media handle, to put in the
Yeah.
show notes. And hopefully everyone who are listening, who are interested, or if you are facing similar struggles, right? Some of these resources, some of the experience Matt shares can really help you out. Thank you, Matt, very
Yeah.
much for your time today and for so brave sharing all this
Uh,
wonderful experience with us.
Thank you so much for the time, Ishan, and just appreciate the work that you're doing. I like to call it the gospel of sleep. It's the good news of sleep, getting it out there and talking about it. So appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you too.